Okay, 7th grade science. This is your textbook, Focus on Life Science. It does say grade 7, and it's green. It's different than the 8th grade book. I'd like you to take note at the bottom of this book is a website, ca7.msscience.com. You're going to want to plug that into your computer because there are online labs, there are tests, there's study guides, there's all sorts of stuff on this website that you're going to be required to use, but also that you can use to help you. So you're going to want to remember that website and maybe check it out, just taking a look at different things. All right, we're going to start with chapter 9. So you're going to open your book to page 356, and page 356 looks like this. And we're focusing on the muscular skeletal system and levers, okay? Now, we're just going to flip right to lesson 1, and I want to show you what happens at lesson 1. The neat thing about our science book this year is it has some really good components. One, it tells us what we're supposed to learn, what you're going to be tested on in 8th grade when you take the 8th grade test. But it also has this reading guide. And when you're reading this particular lesson 1, you want to make sure that by the end you can answer those 3 questions, okay? These are the vocabulary words. You want to make sure that during your note-taking that you do write down your vocabulary words. But I would highly recommend that you use flashcards, because if you use flashcards like index cards, 3x5 index cards, you'll write the word on one side, like for example, you can write bone on this side, and then on the other side, you can write the definition. And so if you go through your book, you'll find the definition for bone, or you can look up in the back of the book, there is a vocabulary definition section. And so it says a bone is a hard tissue made mostly of cells, collagen, and calcium. So that's the definition. So here's bone. You want to flip your card over and write a hard tissue made mostly of cells, collagen, and calcium. Now, as I said, you don't have to do it on index cards. You could just write it in your notes, and I would recommend that if you're writing it in your notes, that you put the word on the paper and you do just a vocabulary section. Do the word on the paper and highlight it, and then write the definition, which I'll model for you in just a moment. But the nice thing about having flashcards is this. Science is tested cumulatively, which means that you will get a test at the end of every lesson, you'll get a test at the end of each chapter, but then you're also going to have a science test at the end of each trimester that covers all the previous information. And so vocabulary is really, really important in science this year, and you have to know the vocabulary because there's always a vocabulary matching section. It is easier to test yourself and to practice your vocabulary using flashcards. You can just have a pile of flashcards and say, okay, bone, give my definition. A hard tissue made mostly of cells, collagen, and calcium, and now I can check it and see if I'm correct. And you don't need an adult to help you, you don't need anyone else to help you, and you can test yourself. And then what you can do is, after you're done with each chapter, you can take all your cards from that chapter and put them in a pile, and you can put like a sticky note or something on top and write, okay, this was chapter 9, lesson 1. And then you can rubber band it and put it aside and save it. And then when you need to study all the vocabulary from chapter 9, you have them all. When you need to study for the whole final, you can say, okay, I'm going to take out my flashcards, and all of your vocabulary for all 3 or 4 chapters will be there, and you'll have them to study from. So I do highly recommend flashcards for that. Now, the other thing I want you to do is I want you to flip a few pages, and I want you to look at the end of this lesson. Every lesson ends like this. It has a lesson review. It has a really fabulous summary, okay, with all the key points. But it has this great review section, which we will be doing all the questions in class. We'll be discussing it. We'll be doing a lab with it. But this is the part that I really want you to focus on. And every chapter has the same information. It's how you make your notes. So basically, if you read through this, it's telling you, look at the red headings, look at the blue headings, include a description of details under each. And that's what we're going to do when we take notes. Okay, and if you ever get confused, you can go to that little section and it'll remind you what you're supposed to do. So you're going to take your science notebook, and again, just like we do with everything, you're going to have your spiral notebook. And you want to make sure that you put today's date, so that if it ever gets lost, you can go back and say, oh, Mrs. Decay, I did it. And this is Chapter 9, Lesson 1, and these are your notes. And so that's the title that you want to put on top of your notes. Now, what we're going to do while we're taking notes is, if you wanted to do a vocabulary section, I would suggest doing your vocabulary first. And so you might take that word bone and write its definition down, but you want to take your highlighter and just highlight it so that you can separate it, because as you're writing lots and lots of definitions, joint, and those kinds of things, you're going to have so much words on this paper that it's going to be a little bit hard for you. So you want to make sure that when you write it, you highlight your vocabulary word. You can then write the definition: hard tissue, made mostly of cells, collagen, make sure I spell it right, and calcium. Okay, and you're going to go through and do all of that for your vocabulary if you aren't putting them on flashcards. Now the other thing that you can do is, as I mentioned, that website, you can go to that website, www.california7.msscience.com, and you can go to this textbook, and you can pull up flashcards and you can print them, and you don't actually have to make them yourself. So that's something else that you can do, and it all counts, just as long as you have a way to practice your vocabulary. Now what we're going to do today is we're going to practice reading and taking notes for science. So I'm going to move my paper on top of the book so that we can read along together, and you should be open to page 360, and I'm going to do maybe 2 paragraphs with you, and then I'll put another video up on how to access the website. Okay, so this is the musculoskeletal system. We're reading the main idea. And I would follow along in your book and take notes on your paper along the way. So the main idea is that muscles, tendons, and bones work in coordinated fashion to produce movement. The real world connection. This means what's happening in life that makes this important to me. What holds up the walls and the roof of the building and protects it from the outside elements. There are beams, braces, and insulation inside the walls and under the roof that you cannot see. What structures support and protect our bodies? So we want to compare ourselves to a building. So there's lots of stuff in a building that are on the inside that you can't always see, but they are supporting that building and keeping it upright. And that's kind of what happens with our body, that there's structures and things inside of our body that's going to hold it up and make it work. And so the first thing they're going to talk to us about is the skeletal system. And if you notice, it's in a red heading. So what I really like to do is I like to say, okay, the red headings are kind of the big ones. It's kind of something that's an overview. And so I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to write with a red pen the skeletal system. And now as I read this next paragraph, I've already covered my vocabulary because we did that either on flashcards or